What's up, everyone? Just about to go in and do a mix down on a current remix that I'm doing, and I've come across a very common issue that I see with my clients' tracks, and one that I also do fix it up at the end. So I'm going to show you how you can fix this. If you are looking for tips and tricks like this for your productions, then be sure to hit that subscribe and notification bell. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can do that over at allanmorrowstudios.com, where there's plenty of trance production courses, start to finish courses, templates, sound banks, and everything you can think of to help you with your productions. So let's get into the video. So one common thing that I see a lot is this in tracks that I get sent to me. Clients' tracks is I've mixed the track down. This is something that I heavily suggest people doing because it's not always very audible. But what I'll do, and I talk about in my mix down tutorials, is bouncing the track down when you're ready to do your final mix down and put it back inside your DAW as one of the audio channels. So you can visually see levels of things, see if there's any mix issues like I can see here. And also just so that you can also see that your tracks are improving as you're mixing it down. So first things first, what you can see here is this is the issue that I'm talking about, this spike in level here, right? So the reason why that's happening is I have these double kicks playing. Now, very common and very easy to do. We're getting in the flow, you know, making our tracks, and we just start to make transitions and stuff. But we spend so much time working on our kick and bass, trying to get it to fit perfectly together, making sure there's no phasing issues and it's pumping and everything well. And then we quickly come and do a transition like this. And sometimes we can forget. I happen to do it a lot as well. Just something, it's not very, like, you know, creative. Like, it's not very fun to do while you're in the creative process, but it's a mix issue that can quickly come up. So all it is that when this kick hits, now I've got this double kick, this bass line that I'm working on is now clashing with this, and it's creating that spike in the track. Now, this is just going to eat into headroom unnecessarily. And it's going to cause issues with your compressors and your limiters and stuff at the mastering stage, and it's not really needed. So depending on what your kick is, sometimes it can just be a case of removing one or two of them, but because my kick's quite long, I'm going to mute both of them. So you can see here, it's this one here that's spiking, but just to make sure it's nice and clean, I'm just going to play, I can't play the full track because it's under wraps at the moment, but I'm just going to play the kick and bass beforehand. So it's not very always audible when you're listening to it, but when you look at your mix, it's going to cause issues with the compressors and stuff like that. So if I mute these now, you can't even barely notice that it's gone, but it cleans up the mix. So let me just bounce this back out again now, and you'll see the difference here. If I just do this, I just want to make sure everything's playing. Yep, that's cool. So if I now just go Control B, you can see now ironed out that spike in the mix there. So do this, nice and clean. So yeah, it's a very common one that I see. And I sometimes forget to do it until I get to the mix down stage, but it does help your mix. What's up, everyone? Allan Morrow here, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you a little tension building technique that you can use in all different parts of your track, really, and on many different elements as well. It's not your typical opening up the filter, really in your face style tension. It's a lot more subtle than that, but it really can help. And quite a lot of the time, depending on the style of track that you're using, sometimes these more subtle building techniques can really kind of help with that tension without going over the top. So before we get into the video, if you'd like to subscribe and notification bell, and also if you'd like to really support the channel, you can do that at allanmorrowstudios.com by grabbing any of the sound banks, tutorials, production courses, MIDI packs and stuff like that, jam-packed with tips and tricks like these. So yeah, they're there to grab if you'd like to support the channel. And obviously with the tip that I'm about to show you, you can use any reverb of your choice, and you can do this in any DAW, providing that the reverb has an EQ feature. You could also put it on a channel and EQ it that way. Sorry, not a channel, a bus, and EQ it that way. So let's get straight into the video. So what I've got here is, this is just a track that I'm currently working on. I'll just let you hear this little build synth lead thing that I've got going on here. So I'll play it in context. Okay, cool. So I'm not going to show you any more of that because I obviously want to save a bit of it for when it's released or whatever. So what I've got here is I've got a reverb on it, right? And what you can do, again, as I said before, you can use any reverb that you want, but you can automate. One thing that you can automate, which I do quite often as well, is the wet amount of the reverb, right? But let's say, for example, you've got the wetness of it already set. One thing you can do to build tension is open up the high frequencies of the actual reverb. So I'm going to show you this now. So you can see there that that's building tension with that reverb on the top end there, at the high end frequencies. Now, if, for example, the lead is set to like this, and this is how you have the reverb already with the high end in, one way that you can do this is close it off for the start of this and then build it back up again. So you're closing it off at the start, therefore allowing the tension to build back up to where it was. But it's a great little way to kind of build that tension without it being too in your face. So let me just bring it back down to where it was. Let's say, for example, it was set here. So a very small little tip, but you can do this on multiple different elements within your build-up. Obviously, making sure that it doesn't sound too washed out and stuff, but great little tip there to help build the tension. And as I say, you could use this on a multitude of different elements. And then obviously as well, you can build the amount of wet signal on the actual reverb as well. You could combine these two different automations there that you can combine to kind of work together. But as I said, if it is already open and you've got it set to this, close it back off. If I just show you again, if we just close it off here. So if it was already set to this, we'd close it like this at the start. And then we can build that tension there by opening up back to where it was. Because don't forget, if you have something that's already set to like here at your drop, for example, closing it off is gonna create that tension, but just you kind of going backwards with it a little bit, if you know what I mean, so that it doesn't sound as epic at this very start. Here, when it transitions from, let's say here, closed off there and brought up there. So I hope this little tip has helped you. As I say, try it on a multitude of different things. It could be percussion, it could be a vocal, it could be anything that you're using in your tracks to help build tension. If you haven't yet done so, be sure to check out the AIM Studios Trance Production community. It's completely free to sign up and you get tips and tricks sent directly to your inbox. You can do that on the website using the free tab. Depending on when you're watching this, it will probably always be called free. But yeah, you can do that. And also, again, as I said before, don't forget to hit that subscribe and notification bell. What's up everyone, Allan Morrow here and welcome to today's video. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can use LFO Tool in a really cool way to kind of chop and change, create different rhythms, different gates and stuff like that for your tracks. This can be across all different sorts of sounds, but generally you can do this with best results probably from your percussion really, which is what I'm going to be showing you today. And if you'd like to hit that subscribe and notification bell before we get into the video, if you are looking for future videos like this to help you with your productions, and if you're looking for more in-depth stuff, then be sure to head over to allanmorrowstudios.com, where there is currently a buy two get one free sale now on. It'll be ending soon. So yeah, let's get straight into the video. Okay, so what I've got here is, well, you'll see I've got 4 LFOs opened up, set to this particular preset, which I'll leave in the description below for you to download it and make your life a little bit easier. Basically, what I've got here is 4 different percussion loops going on, just for the purpose of this demonstration. So I'll just play it for you now. And on each single channel, I have an LFO tool set up like this. So this could be done whenever you really want. Sometimes doing this when you've got like all your loops in place and you want to sort of have a little go at creating some different grooves. But it's a great way to kind of, instead of chopping up loops and trying different bits of one loop with another loop, this is a great and quicker way to sort of try these different things and also get some kind of unique sort of grooves from your loops. So what this is it just diced into 16ths here. So if I just play the first one for the moment, which is this one, we can actually turn these on as well if we wanted to, just to sort of see what's going on. But what we can come and do here is press Shift, and providing this is set to 16, it already is in the preset, we can just come in and start to chop bits of it up. So we can get a nice little groove from it straight away, or a different groove to what's already playing. But the beauty of this, when you've got all four of them open, is you can do stuff like this. So very quickly, you can get different rhythms there for your sounds. Let's have a little go and play with a few more. And you could obviously as well also change these to say 1/8 or whatever you want really, to help you, again, just different types of rhythms. So it'd be great for if you're sort of creating your own kind of loops and stuff like that. It's just a really cool way to kind of like gate things or cut bits out without having to go in and chop them all up, you know. You could also do this with, for example, like acid sounds or pads or anything like that. And obviously I've not kind of mixed the levels right or anything like this. This is just for the purpose. Just added a little bit of reverb on each of them. But again, just a little quick tip for you today. I hope you may get something from this, or hopefully get some really cool ideas out of it. Let me know in the comment section below if there's anything that you would use this on, or how it might be sort of valuable to yourself, or, you know, anything that you've tried it on that you never thought to use it on before. Let me know what you think, and thanks a lot for watching. What's up everyone, Allan Morrow here and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I create a nice thick trance pluck in Vital. The synth is completely free, so if you do want to check it out, you can follow along. But before we get into the video, if you'd like to hit that subscribe and notification bell, if you're looking for future tips like this so that you don't miss any, that'd be really helpful. And if you would like to support the channel, the best way to do that is head over to allanmorrowstudios.com, where there's plenty of start to finish courses, sound banks, templates, MIDI packs, and everything you can think of to help you with your trance productions. So let's get straight in. Okay, so what I've got here is Vital. It's just with the initiated preset. And I've got some MIDI in the background here just to play. Okay, cool. So not very inspiring right now, but it'll sound nice when it's finished. Okay, so I'm just going to use the saw wave that's already there, the initiated oscillator here, which is just a saw. I'm going to leave it exactly pretty much how it is. Let's bring this unison down. Use one voice. Now, before I go any further with this, I like to add in some delay. Right, let's go with a stereo delay. I'm also going to change this, I think, to dotted on the right hand side there. I'm going to turn that down a touch. Right, okay, and the next thing I'm going to do, this can be tweaked later on if I feel it's needed, but just whenever I'm writing or sound designing, trying to design sounds without any effects on them sometimes can be really kind of like just too dry and too uninspiring for me, and it just instantly, just a bit of delay and a bit of reverb can really help me sort of get those sounds sounding nice straight away. So Right, okay, so a bit of reverb here. Let's turn the mix up there. I'm going to add a bit of delay to the reverb so that the initial hit can come through. I'm going to turn the chorus down. Let's turn the time up on the reverb as well. Maybe not that much. Okay, that's all I need to do for the moment. Let's go back into here. Okay, so what I want to do here now is first off, I want to shape the actual envelope, the amp envelope, and I want to do that over here in envelope 1. So what I'm going to do is going to bring the sustain down, bring the decay down there to make it nice and plucky. I'll leave a little bit of release. And that's okay for the moment. Then what I want to do is I want to come over to filter 1, and I want to turn this on here. Now, what I want to do with this filter is I want it to open up to an envelope. So I use envelope 2. You could use envelope 1 if you wanted to, but I like to have a little bit more control over the filter versus the actual amp envelope. So I'm going to drag this over here to the filter. Now, what I want from the filter is I want it to open up quite plucky. So I'm going to have a fast attack. I'm going to have a short decay time. I'm going to bring the sustain down. I'm going to bring the release down a little bit as well. So what this is going to do, it's going to open up the filter to this shape. So a nice plucky. And the beauty of Vitals, you can actually see what it's doing here as well. So now I can tell it how much to kind of open up the filter here. So I can close the filter more, but I can then get it to open up more if I wanted to. So it initially starts here and then opens up further. And that's how we get that kind of nice plucky sound there. See, when I go too high, it sounds a little bit cheap. So I want to try and get something like a bit like a nice thick Vandit style pluck. And then obviously with the decay time here, we can decide on how long we want it to be open for. I think it sounds quite nice there. Okay, so the next thing I want to do here is I'm actually going to turn the drive up on this. Now, what I am going to do, and actually I'll do it in a little bit when I change the velocity. Actually, I'll change the velocity now. Let me just quickly go into the actual MIDI itself, and I'm just going to come in here because this is where I'm going to get a little bit of my character from here. I'm just going to come into the MIDI. I'm going to humanize this a little bit. So I'm just going to go humanize, and I'm going to change up the velocity. I'll keep it on the grid using the position here, but I'm going to change the velocity up a little bit so I can get a little bit of movement, a little bit of extra character inside the synth when I start to map things like the cutoff and stuff to the velocity. I'll keep the note length exactly where it is, and I'll just go select and operate. There we go. So now it's slightly hitting at different velocities. Okay, let's turn that off. Now let's go back into Vital. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to get the velocity, and I'm going to map it to this drive so that each hit now has a different bit of drive to it, giving it a little bit of different character to each hit. So I'm just going to... Now, the other thing I'm going to do as well is I'm also going to map the velocity to the cutoff. So each hit that's slightly different in the velocity is now going to trigger the filter slightly differently too. So one might be more open than the other, etc., etc. Just gives that bit more of a sort of natural feel inside the pluck rather than it sounding very static. This is just a quick announcement to let you know that there is many more sound design tutorials over at AllanMorrowStudios.com, in-depth sound design courses, and everything you can think of to help you with your trance productions. Let's get straight back to the video. And I can tell it how much I want that to kind of react to it. Now, the next thing I want to map to the velocity, and what I like to do is map the velocity also to the resonance here. Now, I don't want it to do it that much because it's way too drastic and I don't want it to sound like an acid sound, but again, just a little tiny bit. These little changes, I think, are what really kind of help your sound design. Nice. Okay, cool. So the next thing I want to do, actually no, let's remove the velocity for the drive a second. That one, yep, bypass that. I'm actually going to use the drive with the random. Let's do it like this, so it's a bit more random. I guess the velocity is just as random as well, but let's just use this as well. So you've got this random envelope here, and it's just going to basically create the drive it's going to make the drive random each hit. So you've got this little visual representation here. That's the beauty of Vital. More synths need this visual representation, I feel. So you can see each hit there is getting a slightly different amount of drive, which is going to just give them a little bit of extra character to the sound there. Okay, so what do I want to do next? Now what I might do as well as this is also map, say, an LFO, something like an LFO to the filter 2. And let's just change the speed on this to like seconds, for example. So what I can do here is I can get a bit random with this, and it's just again about giving the slight changes in that filter. Now you can see it's only triggering to here, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to slow it down or speed up a bit. Let's go up a bit more there. That down, let's bring this one down a bit as well. So just making that filter react a little bit different each time. And they're very, very small changes. But like if you're really into your detailed sounds, I feel like, you know, these are the types of things that make a difference when it comes to that real professional sound. Just going to turn this up a little bit, 1 second. Okay, let's just have a little play around with these envelopes now as well. Let's go in here a sec. Okay, cool. I'm going to bring it up a little bit, actually. I'm going to filter down this reverb a touch, just to give it that a little bit more of a darker sort of feel to it, but still have the reverb in there. Let's bring the mix up a bit. And that is basically all I would do for a really nice thick sounding pluck sound. Obviously, there's other different things that you can do as well here. You could, for example, add in another oscillator and maybe try to add like a little bit of a knock to it by using a different sort of sound. So let's have a look, listen to what we've got here. We could add like a brown noise. Let's put this through to filter 2. Let's turn filter 2 on. And let's just turn that one off a sec. Let's just go bandpass. Pitch this down. Now what I'm also going to do is envelope here. I'm going to map this to the volume of this one. What I just want to do here is just change the shape. Just get a bit of a knocking sound. Again, this is just another example of what you can do here. And we could filter through some of these now. And we could pick what position we want that. Let's see what other filters there are here. I think I'm going to go with the band pass because I can really pick which sort of frequency band that I want to kind of the knock to have. So you could do that as well. Amount of reverb mapped to the velocity. So for example, if the velocity is high, we're going to get that little bit more reverb. If it's quite low down. What's up everyone, Allan Morrow here and welcome to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make an uplifting trance pluck inside Spire. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so what I've got here is an instance of Spire with the preset initiated. I've got a little bit of MIDI here, just playing a bit of a riff slash melody pluck thing, and then a sub pad playing underneath it, just to give it a bit of harmony under there. So I'll just let you hear this first. Okay, so simple little pluck there. Well, simple little riff, so to speak. It's not a pluck yet. So what I want to do is show you here, when you initiate the preset, you'll see here the cutoff automatically is mapped to the envelope. So I'm going to just turn that off and I'll explain in a minute. I am going to do that, but again, this is just kind of how I start it off. I want to show you from scratch. So what I want to do here is, first things first, we've got the saw wave, which is what I'm going to use for this pluck. I'm going to pick my filter. I'm going to probably stick with the Perfecto low pass 4 anyway. So let's bring this down, and I am going to map this envelope to this cutoff so we get that kind of like plucky sound. Let's start off here. So we go filter, cutoff 1, this one here, and I'm just going to dial this up here. So this is basically going to be, I've set it to be closed at the moment. If I was to not have this on, I'll show you what I mean. If I had this off, you're not really hearing it because the cutoff is so closed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to map this to the cutoff, and this is going to determine how much it's going to open from this point. So for how long with the decay time. Up for longer and make it bigger, smaller if I want it to be short and plucky, and then I can determine how much. You can hear there it's really kind of a tight pluck. So what you can do here is change the decay shape. So what I like to do is have a bit of a play around for the sort of type of pluck that you want, but have a bit of a play around with the starting point, how much it's going to open up, the decay time, and also this shape here. Nice one, I like it here. This one, a bit too long for what I'm kind of trying to go for, so I'm going to leave it like that. Now, when I'm creating presets, I like to have a bit of effects on there because it makes it just a little bit more inspiring for me. So I'm just going to add some delay in here. I'm going to change the delay times. Let's have a little listen. So, too much there. Let's have a little play around. Let's maybe... I always suggest whenever you're setting your delay times is don't always just set the exact same delay time for every single melody. This one is quite sparse. So, you know, if your melody is a bit more congested, maybe dial it back a little bit, have different settings, just have a play around. There's not sort of like one rule for your delay times and stuff like that. I've got quite a bit of feedback on this because I do have quite sparse notes here. So when this note hits, I want it to kind of play a little bit before it gets to this one so it doesn't sound empty in those regions. That sounds quite nice. Might just dial it back a touch more there. Cool. Then I add a little bit of reverb. So these are some of the two common effects that I add on when it comes to making sort of like trance plucks or any sort of trance sound really. So let's bring up some of the reverb. You've got different modes here. The ambient one's quite nice. It kind of gives it a nice bit of sparkle on the top. Change the decay time to be a little bit longer for this. As I say, it is quite a sparse melody, so I can get away with the slightly longer decay times there without it getting too messy. Okay, nice. So I can play around with the filter obviously here, close it off. If you find when the filter is really closed, you're still hearing too much of it, let's say it's in context of your track, then you need to come over to your amount here because it's obviously still opening quite a lot, and you're hearing some of those high frequencies come through when the filter's really close, like this, for example. You know, I've gone as far as I can with the filter cutoff closing. You need to go down to here, but I like it where it is for the moment. It's not in context at the moment, so. Okay, cool. Now, what I do like to do here with my plucks as well is in the actual envelope 1, which is your amp envelope inside Spire, I like to bring the release up. You're not really going to hear it when the filter's closed, but as we start to open up the filter, you're going to get that release sound coming through there, so. Kind of like takes it into a bit of a lead from a pluck sort of thing, so. So this is sounding nice. You could definitely have it like this and have it as a nice preset. You know, not all presets have to really be complex, but I'm going to take this a little bit further and kind of show you what I would kind of do this. So let's try adding in a couple more voices, maybe 3. And this is just going to give it a little bit more width. So a nice little bit of twang there to it. Let's make this a bit wider too. Great, so that's bouncing around really kind of nice there. Right, okay, let's have a little look what else we might want to do to this. So from this point here, obviously it's a very simple pluck. There's not a great deal of kind of like change in the character for it. So what we can do here is we can go down to the matrix here, and we can use velocity as a way to kind of change different parameters so that every different note that hits is slightly different to each other, and that's going to kind of give, you know, obviously the difference in character, but also different depths to each sound that hits. So let's just go over to here in the matrix, and we're going to go source, and we're going to pick our source as velocity. So this is basically going to tell this that when we select velocity, whatever the velocity is, it's going to change whatever parameters that I choose to change according to the velocity. So for example, if we use the filter cutoff here, filter cutoff 1, this, for example, whenever I play this now, if I turn this up, if I have one of the plucks having the velocity right down, the cutoff is going to be more closed, and the higher up it is, the more open the cutoff is going to be. So what we can kind of do here is we can really kind of map in exactly what we want. We might want, for example, these first 2 plucks to be quite closed, and then this one open up a bit more. Now, a good way to kind of do this and to get that kind of character is to sometimes just click all of them and just go randomize, right? And we can have a little bit of a play around with this, and we can... There's going to be notes that you're probably going to want to change, you know, and stuff like that. We can maybe not have it happen as much in terms of this is going to be how much that cutoff is going to open according to the velocity. So if we just want it to be a tiny little bit, dial that back a little bit there. So that's a really nice one to kind of map to your velocity. Another one that I like to map to the velocity is by going into oscillator 1 and going to this here and choosing a different wave, right? Now, the wave isn't going to play when it's closed, but if I just pick, I don't know, for example, let's go vocal 1, for example, let's go with that one. So I'm going to keep this closed off, but what I want it to do when I play it now, you can't hear it, but if I was to do this, here it's changing that, it's bending it into that wave there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to this here, and I'm going to go oscillator 1, sorry, and I'm going to go to the wet mix on this. Now I'm going to do this. So depending on the velocity, this is going to kind of be doing this. So each time the note hits, if it's a high velocity, we're going to get a lot of that vocal, that wave. And then if it's really low down, we're going to get just the standard saw there. So I can obviously dial this up again to how much I want that velocity to change it. If you listen to this. Now, don't forget, this is also doing two things when I bring this velocity down. It's bringing the cutoff down, and it's also lowering that wet mix, right? So if I go right the way down, it's just going to be a closed saw wave pluck. If I go all the way up, I'm getting that vocal 1 wave with the filter opened up much more. So this is where you get that difference in character in each sound. Right, so I like that. Now, you can map this to anything on here. So what you want to, well, not what you want to do. Another thing that I quite like to do as well is have a bit of play around with the effects as well. So we might have, for example, the amount of reverb mapped to the velocity. So, for example, if the velocity is high, we're going to get that little bit more reverb. If it's quite low down, it's going to be less reverb. Do that. We could do, for example, where are we? Let's have a little look. We've got reverb. We could go delay feedback. So the higher up the velocity, we can have more feedback from the delay. So for example, this pluck's going to have more feedback off it than something like this. Sounds really kind of nice. What else could we do here? Let's have a little think. We could maybe do the panning, for example. We could, again, running out of space here, so we just want to go over here and we just want to go velocity. We might say, for example, actually no, let's change the amount of detune, for example. So let's go here, let's go to oscillator 1, and we might go the amount of detune happening on the plucks is dependent on the velocity. That sounds really nice too. So less detune down here. Again, more of a saw pluck, filter closed. Higher up, we're getting that vocal 1 wave with more detune. So these are just little things that you can kind of do. And again, as I say, you can map it to kind of anything you want on here. Have a little bit of a play around, see what kind of works for yourself. But again, I could go on all day here with this, but I think I'll stop it there. Hopefully this inspires you a little bit to sort of help you sort of create some sort of nice plucks and sort of get some plucks that are, you know, have a little bit more depth, a little bit more character to them. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you haven't yet done so, please hit that subscribe and notification bell, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers. To go from a saw to a pulse. Now what I want to do to make it even more interesting again is each time the pulse hits, I want this pulse width to change. What's up everyone, Allan Morrow here and welcome to today's video. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how you can create a nice acid sound inside Spire and show you different parameters that you can kind of map and modulation to keep it interesting. Let's get straight into the video. Okay, so what I've got here is an instance of Spire and I've just initiated it here. If you go up to here and hit this initiate button, And also I've got here is just some MIDI from my Acid MIDI pack volume 2. If you want to check that on the website, I'll leave a link in the description below. But basically this is the pattern. Okay, cool. Obviously, just with the saw running through it, it's not very inspiring, but let's get started on it and I'll show you kind of what I would do here to kind of make this kind of nice and interesting. So I'm going to bring it down an octave. So it sits a little bit lower there. First things first, I'm going to go over to my filter and I'm going to start with the Acedo. I like low pass 2, but have a little play around and see what works best for you. I just like the way it sweeps when I'm sweeping through the filter. So I'm going to bring the filter cutoff down. I'm going to bring the resonance up to give it that twang. That sounds really quite nice, even just there. But let's make it a little bit more interesting. I like to add a little bit of delay when I'm doing my presets, just give a bit of atmosphere and movement to it. So just pick a nice setting for whatever pattern that you've got. And then I'm just going to add a touch of reverb here. Bring the decay down as well a little bit, just so it doesn't sound too washed out. Okay, cool. So this is the very sort of basis of an acid sort of sound here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how you can kind of make this a lot more kind of interesting. So first things first, I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a little bit of distortion. So what I like to do whenever I'm doing the changes to this acid sound, I like to sweep through the filter cutoff to kind of hear how it's going to sound in context within a track if I'm trying to build tension and stuff like that. So I'm going to come over to here and I'm going to use Tube 3. I really kind of like this one for acid sounds. But have a little play around between the different low pass filters and the different algorithms here for the distortion. Let's bring the drive up and some of the wet. We've got a nice little sort of sweet spot there. Okay, perfect. So we've added that in. Next thing I want to do is, with the old 303, you could choose between pulse and sort of saw. Now, if you don't know which one you want to pick, you can go through here, go up to Control A, and you can actually morph with this inside Spire from saw to pulse. Right? So you could either pick one or the other, or you can use different ways to kind of morph between the two individually on each note. Now, we could use an LFO on this to kind of go up and down with it, but I like to use the velocity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to map this Control A over to here. I'm going to select my source as velocity. Now, these MIDI packs do have velocity parameters in them. Sorry, velocity amounts in them. But I've brought them all down for the purpose of this tutorial. So now that it's all the way down here, it's going to be a saw. But what I can do is I can go in and choose each individual note to be either a saw or a pulse or a morph between the two of them by just going over here. So I'll bring this up and I'm going to see when it's right down here, it's a saw. And as it gets higher up, it's a pulse. So I can come in and choose whatever I want to do here. So just giving that a little bit more interest to each individual hit. Okay, so the next thing I want to do here is I can also play around with the resonance with the actual velocity mapping too. So I'm going to come over to here and I'm going to go to velocity because, sorry, not velocity. I'm going to go to the resonance. If I play it through and as I move the resonance around, listen to how the acid sort of changes. So we can get some sort of nice twang to the acids there. So what we can do here is I can map this resonance, drag this over here to the velocity again. So we can either go this way, where the higher up the velocity, sorry, let's bring this down a little bit. The higher up the velocity, the more resonance we're getting, but also remember, the higher up the velocity, the more pulse it's going to be as well. So obviously, if you want to change that round, we can go the other way, for example. It's even more. So as we come down, it's going to be saw with more resonance. As we go up, it's going to be pulse with less resonance. So again, just creating a little bit more interest there. And you can move these around, swap them over, see what kind of works nice for your sound. Okay, cool. So let's now come out of here because I want to do a few other little things here. Next thing I want to do is I want to, instead of having to do this with my hand or manually, I'm going to go over to LFO 1 and I'm going to get the cutoff and I'm going to drag it over here to this LFO 1. I'm going to change the rate to a lot slower. And I'm going to do something like just a random sort of waveform here. So I can do this and you can morph between it and do whatever you want. It's going to be nice and slow. It's going to kind of go up and down, essentially like me doing this randomly. But I want to find a nice sweet spot to it as well. So I'm going to dial a bit of this in. And this is going to change how much it's going to do it by. Have a play around, find a nice sweet spot. I'm also going to just, now that I've set these, I'm just going to loop this a little bit further so we can hear it over a period of time. We can obviously set where it's going to start from here. Okay, great. So the next thing that we have is when we initiate the preset inside Spire, the envelope 3 is set to the cutoff 1 here, right? So that's what's giving it that sort of initial attack with the filter. So what we can also do here for different changes in each of the different hits is we can actually get this decay time, to show you what I mean, if I play around with it as it's playing. So I can actually map this to an LFO 2, right? So if I go to, let's do a new one, and let's go envelope 3, decay time. So this one here, what I want to be doing is moving this. So do a little bit here over a period of time. Let's do a random sort of LFO as well. Anyone here, just pick something like this. And just do a small amount over a small bit of time. What we're getting now, speed up a little bit, different decay times on this envelope 3 here. Nice. Right. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is come back over to here. And obviously before we mapped Control A to go from a saw to a pulse. Now what I want to do to make it even more interesting again is each time the pulse hits, right? So as it goes up here, these are more pulses up here. Let's do it here with this one. I want this pulse width to change. So I'm going to go over to LFO 3 here. And I'm going to map this one. So if we come up here, we can change the pulse width by using Control B. So again, more interest to each of these individual notes as they hit. They're not always just hitting at the same width pulse. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go drag this one, Control B, over to here. Turn this up a bit, bring the rate down. And just going to do that. So now these hits are going to slightly sound different again. Yeah, and just adding that little bit of interest to each individual hit. Okay, cool. So the last thing I'm going to do in this is I'm going to come over to LFO 4 and I'm going to map the glide here to this one. Now, I've got some notes that are bleeding over each other here, so I can have some nice sort of glide to the sounds, but I don't want it to always glide. So I'm going to set it again to sort of a bit more random. and I'm going to use just I'll use this sine wave here. Or I can change the amount of glide that's happening over a slow period of time. So yeah, they're the different things you can kind of do. Obviously, there's a lot more different things you could do in the Matrix as well. You could be mapping, obviously, sort of like the pan to the velocity and stuff like that for the oscillator. Lots of other different things, but I'm going to leave it there for today. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you haven't yet done so, please hit subscribe and like the video if you have found some value in this. And be sure to check out the sound banks as well that I've got on the website. I actually have an acid sound bank for Spire on the website too. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you in the next one. In today's video, I want to be showing you the leads to my new track, which has just been released today on Pure Trance Neon, called What Are We? The leads are a little bit unique in a way that they're not your typical sort of melody sort of style leads. They are just basically quite simple, but got quite a bit of movement to them in terms of like the sort of build to them and stuff like that. So because of that, I wanted to give you a little insight into how they're created, so that you don't always think you just got to go down your own typical route of just, you know, a melody and some pads and stuff like that. So yeah, let's get straight into it and I'll show you exactly how these are created. Okay, so what I've got here is the leads. There's two main leads. As I say, the MIDI for these things is really, really simple. If I just zoom in here, it's just a repeating pattern like this. I'll let you hear it. Actually, I'll let you hear quickly the track. Just so you can hear what the track sounds like. So this is the main breakdown part here. I won't show any more in case we get copyright strikes, but basically, the main lead here is made up with Zebra. So it's just very simple notes playing this sequence here. It changes up a little bit over here. And then this bass pattern playing underneath, which is basically harmonizing with the top notes here. So we've got, sorry, this one and this one. Building over time. So I'll go through the actual synth and how that's like made up, and then we'll go through the automation and the processing and stuff like that. So essentially what we've got here is one oscillator going through a filter. It's got two voices, well, not heavily detuned, but quite a bit of detune on them there. In the oscillator effects here, we've got the brilliance turned up, which I believe is sort of accentuating sort of the higher harmonics there of that saw inside that oscillator. And then it goes through to this filter here. Now, this low-pass filter is sent to LFO 1, so it's kind of doing this over time with the filter going up and down. So really sort of kind of like simple stuff there. In here, in the effects, we've got a bit of EQ, delay, and compression. We've got the noise oscillator there, just to kind of, if I just isolate this, you can hear. Just adding a little bit of noise texture there to the actual lead sound. So real kind of simple stuff in there. As I say, it's just a very simple pad, just playing some notes. But then on this effects chain, I have a gate here. Now I've turned the gate down a bit, so it's not sort of like on and off, on and off. You can hear it's kind of a bit more like this. I'll go through some of these processing chains so you can hear what each of them are kind of doing here. So it's kind of a bit sort of like hitting there, but it's not sort of playing through, which is what I kind of wanted it to do. Now, I could have changed the envelope shape. That's totally fine, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to add a little bit more sort of like delay from that attack from the initial part of the hit. So this is where I added in a tape delay. after this, I added in the crystallizer, which is Sound Toys. This is basically just giving it a little bit of extra sparkle here on top of the lead sound, an octave up. Just a slight little bit of shimmer there on the top of that. Then we have the tremolo, which is just moving it slightly left and right over 2 bars. Very small amount though, not a great deal. And then what I've got on here is Fresh Air. This is a plugin from, I can't remember the name of it right now. Slate, that's the one. And it's just basically adding a little bit of sort of like of an airband sort of thing to it. Very subtle little effects there. So that's the first main lead, and over time, what's happening here, we have the filter cutoff opening up, very sort of simple stuff. You'll notice as well in the lead sound, it's kind of changing each as it goes through. So if we look here, the notes change here, and they also change again here. So it's just different patterns playing, still trying to stick to that like simple riff though throughout the whole process. And then I change it again, I believe up here, or was it the lower notes I changed? I think it was the lower bass notes I changed over here. So you'll see the pattern for the bass progression changed from this to this over here. Second. That goes F. Yeah, so you can see here I changed the progression in the bass notes there, which is what kind of gives it that difference in sort of mood from bar 209 and 225, because I did it twice, I believe. Those different changes. If you listen to the full track as a whole, you'll hear those different changes and mood changes in the actual lead sound when you're listening. If you'd like to support the track, by the way, check out the link below. You can grab a copy there if you want to support the channel and this track. And then the next sound that we've got here, the next lead sound, is this one. It's like a lead support. Again, this full track has got 22 channels, and even some of these could have been consolidated, you know. So let's have a little listen to lead support 2, well, the second lead. So this one sits a little bit lower than the original one. Again, it's a Zebra preset. In fact, it could have even been the same one. It's not the same one. It's a different one. It's an atmosphere sound that I've got here. So what you've got here is again, another sawtooth, 2 sawtooth oscillators, both with 2 voices. Bit of detune on them again. These are now going through to a bandpass filter. Love this bandpass filter inside Zebra 2, this BP res band. And then this bandpass filter is going through to this LFO here, which is sort of like a bit of a, I guess, sort of gated sort of LFO here. And it's basically getting that to cycle through, and you'll hear it going up and down. Just kind of giving it a little bit more texture to that main lead there. And also I would have put it in there because I felt that this main top lead on its own didn't have enough low end to it. Take it out, you can hear there that it doesn't sound quite as thick. So you've got those 2 oscillators going through to that bandpass filter, sweeping up and down. And then you've got a bit of delay, bit of reverb on there. Now in the actual synth effects as well on here, again, I've got a gate, same gate as before, I believe. Again, dragging down the volume a little bit so it's not just so staccato-y, whatever you want to call it. And then we've got a bit of EQ, tape delay again, crystallizer again. This time I've added in vinyl, this free plugin from I'm forgetting all the names of these plugins. Isotope. And this is just to basically add a little bit of warp to it, just to give it that sort of difference in pitch as it's going, slight amount, bit of wear, and a little bit of mechanical sort of electrical noise to it, just to try and give it a little bit of that older sort of feel to it, older sort of retro sort of sound. So that's that. And then what else have I got? Compression, which is only there for the side chaining of the drop, and I think the same for the compressor. I didn't do it on that one, but I've done it on this one just to duck as the kick comes in that low end. And then what else? We've got an exciter on there just to give it a little bit of high end sort of high end presence there, and then again just a tremolo in there as well. So just a small amount left and right again. So yeah, they're the two leads. I do also have, just quickly, another atmosphere sort of sound that comes in here as well. Might as well show you this while we're here, because this kind of plays a part in the main build up. This one here. So again, this is another gated sort of pad sort of thing here. If I just play it on its own. And again, it's a similar sort of structure here. It's with this track, I wanted something to sort of be it wanted to sound quite hypnotic. And I find that gates kind of help kind of do that. So this is kind of nice. Then you've got the crystallizer on it again. I've got this RC20 retro on it here, which is just kind of adding a little bit of wow and flutter to it, just to give it, again, that bit of movement, a little bit of wobble there. There's a little bit of noise in there. And again, just a little bit of dropouts and stuff like this here in volume, just to kind of, again, just to try and give that bit of movement to it. What else have I got in here? I've got tremolo. Again, this is a bit more of a drastic sort of back and forth with the tremolo there. And then I've got this reverb, which, if you haven't checked it out yet, do. It's expensive, but for me, I feel like it's better than Art's Acoustic. It's got a really nice lush reverb to it. And then compression again. This is just to sidechain it. So that's basically how it's built up. Really kind of simple stuff. The notes, again, really kind of simple, but I just kind of felt that it worked for the sort of style of the track that I was trying to make. What's up, everyone? Today I want to show you exactly how you go from a pluck into a lead. It's quite common in trance breakdowns where the melody will start off plucky and it'll go into a lead. So I'm going to show you how you can set up your envelopes to make this happen. So what you want to do, I've got a pluck here from mine and Bluff Monkey's Spire Soundbank. You can check that out on the website if you'd like to. I've just thrown in some melody from the website as well. That's from the MIDI pack, the melody one, if you want to check that out. But what we want to do here, and this is the way I kind of like to look at it, is if we set up the envelope one, which is your amp envelope in Spire, we want to bring the sustain all the way up, bring the attack down, and bring the decay down, and we're going to work on the release in a little bit. So that's the first part of the setup. This is going to be basically the shape of the sound as it's opened up. Now, what you also want to then do is you want to go to any envelope inside Spire. It's automatically set up to go to the filter cutoff. So in here, what we want to do is have this to cutoff 1. So this is going to map to this cutoff here. And basically, best way to kind of look at this is going to be the shape at the start of the melody. So when the melody's playing like this. And then it's going to, as we open up the filter, it's going to go into this shape with the sustain opened up and stuff like that. And that's just the easiest way to look at it if you're not too clued up on sound design. So the way that we do this, we send this to cutoff 1 and we close the filter right off. Now, at this point here, we can determine how closed we want the pluck or how we want it to sound at the start of the melody. So if I, let's say, start off like this, you can't hear it, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the cutoff a little bit. And when this filter is closed, we're going to determine where we want the pluck to be opened up to at the start of the melody by using this. your filter cutoff is like fully closed inside a preset and you're thinking, why does it still sound open? Be sure to check the filter envelope to see how much the amount of it's going to the filter, and you can then dial that back. So we can determine here. Quite like it there, right? Now what we can do is we can open up the filter fully, so at the point of where it's going to be opened up, and I can determine now with this one, the amp envelope, how I want it to sound like at the end of when it's opened up. So we can then play around with, like, this is what I said about the release later on. Now this is something you will obviously do in your track, but maybe like set it at the drop where everything's opened up, but we can determine there. So from that point now, we're going from this plucky envelope So try to kind of look like this. When the filter's closed, we've got this plucky envelope here, and we can change this. And also at the end, or when the filter's fully open, or wherever you want to set it to, depending on your tastes. So you can see at that sort of like 12 o'clock mark, it changes from sort of like a pluck into a lead. So let's just do that again. Let's maybe start the pluck off opened up a little bit more at the start. And then obviously in this, you can also then send this through to a macro, or you can just use the cutoff. But if you've got macros set up in, say, the likes of Ableton or something like that, you can send this cutoff to a macro and then just have the one dial. But you've already set it up inside the synth so that the ADSR for the envelope and the amp envelope are set perfectly to your tastes. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you haven't yet done so, be sure to head over to allanmorrowstudios.com, where there's plenty of other in-depth production tips, tutorials, start to finish courses, sound banks, MIDI, and everything else you can kind of think of to help you with your trance productions. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have and you've took some value from it, please like, subscribe, all that other stuff. Thanks a lot for watching. See you in the next one. What's up, everyone? Today I'm going to show you a really interesting way to sort of layer your leads. So let's get straight into the video. So what I've got here is I've got a stack created inside a group inside Ableton. And what I've put in there is I've put 3 different copies of the plucks and leads rack. If you want to check that out on the website, you can do, but it's essentially just 3 different layered sounds. And what I've done here is I've actually created a macro to basically automate or change this selector here. So what I've done is I've got the 3 different layers and I've created them, spread them equally. You could play around with this to see which works best for your sounds. But let me just play the actual lead sound itself. So what's happening, it's jumping between the 3 different layered sounds, right? And the way that I've set that up is I've done 3 different layers. And what I've then done is I've put an LFO, and the LFO is mapped to this selector here. So you can see this jumping around. You can change it to different ones to have a bit of a play around. Maybe you might want to use a sine wave. I've used this random here, and you can obviously change the rate on how much you want it to be jumping around. And then I've just added some EQ to the top end here and a little bit of glue compression just to kind of glue all the different sounds together. But if you have a little look, so as I say, you could pick 3 different sounds. You could do this with acids, for example, if you've got like an acid riff. They're all playing the same MIDI, but they're jumping between 3 different sounds. If I just solo this first one, for example. So you can see it's catching different parts of this melody. And then here's the other sound, the next layer. And then the last layer is this. So I've chose 3 sort of similar ones. Have a bit of a play around and see if completely different sounds might work too. It might sound a little bit disjointed, but and this is all them together again. So it gives some nice sort of dynamics to your lead sound. You know, some of them might be pluckier, some of them might be more like opened up with more release on them. But I just find it's a really cool sort of dynamic way to sort of change those lead sounds and give that lead some depth, you know. Have a little play around. You might want to use 2 different layers. You might want to use 4 different layers. You might even want to have some of these sort of overlap with each other a little bit as well. Let's have a little play around with this. And then obviously play around with the different rates for the LFO as well. You could maybe smooth it out a little bit. You might want to have it at a much slower rate. Now, I've only played around with this on leads, but I think it'd be really good on sort of like acid lines as well, or atmospheric textures, or pads even, you know, having different layers of pads and it's sweeping between the different pads. Have a bit of a play around. Really sort of interesting way to sort of layer those leads and see what you kind of come up with. If you like the video, be sure to hit that subscribe and notification bell. And if you'd like to check out that plucks and leads rack on the website, you can do so too. Really interesting way to sort of create plucks. Really kind of fun as well. You've obviously got the random here as well. So actually, let's just quickly go through and just hit random on some of these and sort of see how this sounds. So if I just go... So obviously when they're completely different sounds, it sounds a little bit disjointed, but have a little bit of a play around with it. You might find something that's pretty close, and then you might just have to tighten the envelopes. So let's say one of them isn't quite as plucky and it's a little bit more sort of like sustained. Have a little bit of a play around, but as I say, the way they had it before sounded really kind of nice, so quite like that. So yeah, be sure to check it out. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one.
Okay, so today I just want to go over something that I've seen happen a few times with clients and stuff that I work with, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when we kind of look at it like this. Now, what they'll be doing is they'll be listening to their kick through something like span. So I've just thrown in a kick and a sub bass here to show you what I mean. So we've got a kick here playing through span, and I've just got LFO Tool here to show you what's happening. So we've got the kick. This is just one of my heavy trance kicks from the website if you want to check it out. So let's play it. And they're playing the kick, and then they're having a little bit of look at the peak of the kick. So somewhere around sort of 63 hertz there. And then they're going to their bass, and they're finding 63 hertz. Let's just drag this one down to, let's just type it in. 63 hertz. And then ducking their sub bass. Their sub bass to get out of the way of the kick. But the sub bass that they've got is an offbeat pattern, which is playing at this point here. So here's where the kick plays, and here is where the sub is playing. Now, they're not playing at the same time. So to duck frequencies to get out of the way of something that isn't playing at the right time isn't really necessary, because they're not playing at the right time. Now, if you're wanting to duck those frequencies in your sub bass because you think it sounds better, then that's totally fine. But we have to think about frequency and time. So we'll play them together. We're just ducking the frequencies from this part of the time. The kick isn't even touching the sub. So whenever you're thinking about doing some EQing or anything like that, think about what it is that you're doing. Now, I feel that the reason why people use this technique is because they've seen a tutorial and they've seen it done with where maybe the kick is playing at the same time as the sub, and they don't want those clashing frequencies, and that's fine. But when it comes to something like a sub bass like this that's playing an offbeat and your kick is playing on the onbeat, again, you can then EQ it if you want because it sounds better in the mix. Don't be EQing it to make way for your kick when your kick isn't even actually playing at that same point. you've taken some value from this video, be sure to hit that subscribe and notification bell. And also check out some of the other in-depth tutorials on the website at allanmorrowstudios.com. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks a lot. Bye.